And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at Kings of Israel. Now, a couple things here. First of all, I did a paid preview for this game when it was on Kickstarter, so you can take that into account. Secondly, I am a Christian, and I'm always on the lookout for Christian-themed games or biblically-based games. And for the most part, I would say about 99% of the games that are made in that genre are absolute garbage. So I'm hoping that this is a good game. It's a cooperative game, which often fits the Christian theme type thing. So let's take a look, see if the game's any good or not. The game takes place on this map of Samaria here. You're going to have an altar that starts in Samaria, and you have to build a certain number of altars based on the number of players in the game to win the game before this piece on the timeline gets down to Israel destroyed. This piece here is going to start on the timeline, and you'll notice that the timeline shows the different kings of Israel. The yellow means the good kings, and red were wicked kings. You'll also notice some spots say 3 to 4 players or just 4 players. So if you don't have that many players, you would skip those as you move down the timeline. Now, at the beginning of a turn, if the timeline shows a good king, then players are going to draw a blessing card. And these blessing cards are cards that you can use and help you out to do different things. Like this lets you look through the resource deck for 3 gold cards and add them to your hand. Well, that's a good thing. Gold cards might be useful. Here's Sharpening Iron. Place this card out face up once per round. A single player may give another player 1 resource card for free if they're at the same location. So some pretty interesting things. Unfortunately, you can see that's only going to happen in a 4-player game. It's going to happen 5 times throughout the game. The other times when you're on a bad king, you'll draw a sin and punishment card. These cards are not going to be helpful. This player says each player may not build an altar or draw more than 2 resource cards this round unless they get rid of a gold. This one here says the starting player, whoever is the starting player that round, has to move the Joppa. No one can enter the location that has the most sin cubes. So in this here, you won't be able to go to here, 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 or here, because they all have 2 sin cubes. This one here is a foretold event. This will happen occasionally. It says, for all mountain locations containing sin cubes, remove any altar there and receive an idol. So any mountain location, and some of them are mountains, that had a sin cube and an altar, the altar would come off and a golden idol would come on, which is really bad. Now this is a foretold event, so you would count the number of players in the game. Let's say there was 4 players, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we would put that face up here so you can see, you know this is coming. So there's this idea of these prophecies coming to pass, and multiple foretold events could be in the deck. Here's another one here, the Holy Place Decay. After that card is drawn, and then, except for the first turn, Sin is going to advance. You're going to draw location cards, and you're going to add cubes to those locations. Sometimes it will show a city, Shiloh, so I simply find Shiloh on the map, and add a sin cube to it. Sometimes it will show a nation like Aram. So I look for Aram, and I look for the cities that are attached to it, and both those cities would get a sin cube. Whenever there is 3 sin cubes in a city, you would add a golden idol. Whenever there's a golden idol in a city that gets hit with a sin cube, then all the adjacent cities to that get a cube. Now you have to be careful, because if you ever need to put sin cubes on the board, and or golden idols, and you don't have enough left over, you automatically lose the game. Now once players are done with that, then players are going to take different actions that they're going to be able to do on their turn. Now these actions can be simply taking your profit. You'll be starting a certain spot, and the way you know what spot is, each player has an ability card. These give you a special ability, like this guy can hold 8 resource cards. Normally he can only hold 6. This guy here can, when he moves out of a mountain, he doesn't take an action. He just runs down the mountain. This guy can give things to other people for free. New sin cubes can appear at your location. It looks like Moses there. Alright, so anyway, you have these cards, but they also tell you where you start. So one of your actions you can take on your turn is you can move from one location to another. It can be on ship by ship or on land. You can also preach, which would take a sin cube out of an area. So you can do these actions multiple times. You can also destroy an idol, get rid of an idol, but that takes 2 of your actions to get rid of that. You can draw resource cards from the pile. You can draw 2 resources. There are many different resource cards in the pile. There are grain and cattle. These can be used to move. You can spend them to move 3 spaces when you're moving. There's gold, wood, and stone. Those 3 resources can be discarded together to build an altar at your location, as long as there's already not an altar there. And then grain and cattle, which were used for movement, can also be done to sacrifice at an altar. Let's say there was an altar here. I could get rid of all the sin cubes there if I sacrificed, and 1 sin cube from each adjacent location, which you can see can really pow and get rid of quite a few of the sin cubes. And then you're allowed to give resources as an action, 2 resources from your hand to someone else's hand. So those are the different actions that you'll do, and you keep doing this until you either win, which is build a certain number of altars, or lose, run out of cubes, run out of golden idols, or Israel is destroyed. There's also an expert version of the game where there is a false prophet who will be moving around the board, and this false prophet is going to try to destroy altars. He'll go around and move to different altars, and wherever there is an altar automatically start dropping sin cubes. If there's enough sin cubes, the altar gets destroyed. So he's kind of being a pain in the neck. Kings of Israel is an excellent little game. Now, you will notice when you play it, the first thing that's going to come to mind is Pandemic. If you played Pandemic or not, Pandemic has virus cubes that spread across the board. This one has black sin cubes spreading across the board. There are differences. There's only 1 sin just spreading across the board. And Pandemic, there's 4 different diseases. Here, there's not like necessarily outbreaks, although there's something similar. And both have a loss condition if you get too many cubes on the board. Other than that, though, there are many differences. The resource cards, pulling cards from the resources and utilizing them. One of the little features I liked on this was each resource card tells you exactly what it does. Like the grain says, use. Discard grain and use 1 action to move up to 3 spaces on a road. Or while at an altar, discard cattle and grain to make a sacrifice. I just thought that was a nice little addition to this game. The game also has those events. I really like the foretold events. Something bad that's going to happen that you know is coming. You can't really stop it, but you can mitigate it. Like there was one time it says all your altars will be destroyed unless you pay a resource for each one. So we knew that was coming, so we made sure we had the resources ready to get rid of it. Now the game itself is of medium level difficulty. Not super hard, although you can lose, and not really easy either. But if you add in the false prophet, then the game actually becomes fairly difficult. The special abilities are nice. The artwork is done. This is a game in which I can go, yes, a biblically based game which is quite good. It's a derivative of Pandemic. There's no question of that, but it stands on its own. It's something different. Now, I do wonder if replayability will be huge, but I think that there's enough here, and I think this is a really solid game because you never know what order the events are going to come up in. The different player amounts, it works really well with 2 players and works just as well with 4. That works well. I wish it maybe had allowed somehow for a 5th player to get involved. But there's enough going on here, and you could use this in Sunday school class. You could use this in a Bible study, but you could use it in a game group. It's a solid game. Thank you. That's all I was asking for. So certainly something to be interested in, to look at. Even if you're not a Christian, so I don't care about a biblically based theme, it's still a very interesting game. It's a lightweight cooperative game, and there's not a whole lot of those out there. I think this one fits a niche, and it does it very well. Dice Tower Judgment, approved.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.